Okay. Now, in addition, obviously, for user friendliness, if you need to specify a location for a user, what better way to specify this information than showing them a map, right? Most of us intuitively know how to read a map. How many here don't know how to read a map? Almost no one, right? If you are shown a map, you can clearly look at the map and then approximately understand what information is being provided to you. So, map-based user interfaces are very, very useful for certain applications. And the next topic that we'll talk about is how is Maps supported? Obviously, since Android is Google's product, Google Maps is a natural fit for answering this particular question. But, of course, Android does not preclude you from using other Maps services. Google Maps is just one of the Maps services that you can use in Android. If you don't like Google Maps, you can use OpenStreetMaps or Bing Maps or any of the other ones, as long as they provide Android support. Okay, but Google Maps is a natural fit for Android. But you have to remember that Google Maps API within Android does not come as part of the standard Android framework. Google Maps API is a separate library. You have to install it separately within your application. So that is very important to keep in mind. This is an external library, not part of the Android's standard framework. So if you want to make use of Google Maps, you have to install that library specifically in this case. And this comes in this package, COM Google Android Maps package. And what this package allows you to do is, it allows you to download map fragments to display on the screen, things like rendering and caching of maps, map tiles. Remember, maps comes in the form of tiles that are displayed on the screen. Depending upon the zoom level, you will have tiles of different sizes and so on. And all these things. Again, important to note that this is not part of the standard Android library. Let me make it very clear to you. Not part of the standard Android library. And is also not part of the standard SDK. You have to explicitly install Google Maps library within your application. For example, if you're making use of Eclipse, you need to use the Android's SDK installer in order to explicitly install the Google Maps. But once you install, then you can make use of the Google Maps library. And in case of Android, Google Maps support is provided by making use of this class called MapView class. MapView class is a subgroup of the View class. We have already seen the View class. View class allows you to support many kinds of widgets on the screen and so on. MapView is a part of subgroup of the View class. What this MapView allows you to do is it displays the map with the data that is obtained from the Google Maps service. If you want to use OpenStreetMaps, then you get out of the corresponding library and then install and then make use of it. And so on. And in addition, the MapView class provides many UI elements that enable you to interact with the map. So you don't have to explicitly do much things, interaction. Things like user interaction on the map is supported through things like key presses, touches, and zoom controls. You can do pinch and zoom on the map. You can touch a particular location on the map. You can long press on the map. All these events will be delivered to your application. And you have to handle those interactions within your application. And in addition, maps will be displayed as one of the layers. And you can superimpose additional things on the maps. Like, for example, if you are creating an application to show the location of all the parking locations, say for example in different places in Hong Kong, you can identify the parking locations by putting a P on the screen. This P is not part of the maps. The maps will be an underlying layer, and on top of it you can overlay it with P's at all those locations where the parking garages are located. That can be very easily handled by using something called overlay maps. I will show you the code corresponding to it in a minute. And then when you go to the lab tomorrow, you will get to make use of that example in one of the applications that we do. In order to make use of Google Maps within your application, you need to be able to obtain something called the Maps API key, which you need to obtain from the Google Maps service, and then you have to include it within your application in order to be able to facilitate. How do you do it? This is documented on the Android developers website. For the specific application that you're going to see in the lab, we will have the step-by-step procedure given to you. So one of the things that you need to do is you need to go and get hold of a Maps API key. If you don't have the API key, the maps will not be displayed on the screen. Obtaining the API key is free of cost. And once you obtain the Maps API key within your application, you would make use of a map within your application by including this in the layout file, in the layout XML file. This specialized object, when you include within the layout file, will basically create a map view. And in order for it to work, you need to be able to supply your Maps API key. And this is unique to every computer and every user. So that's why I cannot put it in there myself. You will have to get one on your own for yourself. Now, obviously, you will ask the question: how come I can get an application from somebody and then make use of it within my device without obtaining a Maps API key? The way it works is that if a developer is releasing an application, they use a specialized Maps API key that they embed within the application, and that enables anybody that installs the application to be able to see the map view. But the developer needs to get hold of the Maps API key. When you go to the lab tomorrow, you will be acting like a developer. So that's the reason why you have to get hold of your own Maps API key to be able to make this code function correctly. Okay. Now, in addition, if you are going to make use of Google Maps API, you have to modify the manifest file by including this particular thing in the manifest file, essentially specifying that you are making use of this library, and also you need to specify the permissions to the user, saying I'm going to make use of the internet, because obviously Google Maps requires access to the internet in order to fetch the maps information and access location, whether codes or file, depends on what you do. Within your activity, if you need to use Google Maps within your activity, obviously you're going to use Google Maps as Google Maps map view is going to be included in one of the layout files, and these layout files have to be inflated in one of your activities. If you're going to make use of it within your activity, you have to extend this class called as the map activity class. So this is not the standard activity, this is a specialized subclass of activity. This is called map activity class. And then after that, you get a reference to the map view in the layout, and then you need to implement this particular method, isRouteDisplay method, within your application. Most of the time, you don't need to implement anything in here. You can implement it as a blank thing if you're not specifically making use of that particular function, but it has to be included in the map activity class. And if you're using the emulator to test the application, your standard AVDs that you created don't work anymore. You need to create a specialized AVD enabling Google Maps API to be used. Okay? You all know how to create AVDs, right? You have been explained this in the lab before. You have to create a separate AVD. So your regular AVDs that you were creating don't work anymore. For maps, you have to create a separate AVD. Again, all these instructions are there in the lab tomorrow. Now, if you need to put additional information onto the map, this can be done by using something called overlay or something called the itemized overlay class. As you will see when you go to the lab tomorrow, the way we make use of the itemized overlay in the lab is that for our proximity alert example, I extend it to make use of the maps, and then I specify the MTR locations by putting a push pin to indicate the locations of those MTR stations on the map. So let me start up the maps emulator, and then and once it is ready, then we'll be able to display it on the screen. Let's see. Going back to Eclipse, what I'm doing is under Window, I am calling the Avd Manager. You all know this Avd Manager, and so in here I have created a separate AVD enabling Google Maps API. How do we do that? If you you all know how to create API or AVDs, right? So in this case, instead of using that, you need to make use of that when you create maps. Okay. Now let me start up Maps AVD, and I will scale the so that I can show the AVD on the screen. Okay, just come up on the other screen. I'll bring it up there in a minute. And we will see how the Maps API works in practice. This is still a little too big to be displayed completely on the screen. We'll wait for it to start, while in the meantime I'll try to sort of give you how I implement the maps. So I took the same MTR station alert example that we have seen earlier, but now use a maps-based user interface for that particular MTR alert. So as you see, much of these things, MTR DB adapter, MTR proximity intent receiver, my location, all these things are common between this example and the previous MTR alert example. I just changed this one and add one more class here called the Itemized Overlay class. Okay, let's go into this one and check how I make use of the Maps API in this particular activity. So as I mentioned, in this case, this one, now instead of extending just the activity class, I am extending the map activity class. If I do that, then I get all the access to the maps-based interface within my application. In here, I get a reference to the map view. Where is this map view included? This map view should be in the layout file for this, in the layout file, the main layout file. So let me go to the main layout file and then show you how this is actually included in there. So I have to modify the main layout file. This main layout file contains only one widget here, which is the map view. And notice that I have included an API key here. An API key, Google Maps API key looks like something like this. It's gibberish, but you need to get hold of it from Google Maps. You need to register and get hold of it from there. And then if you include it within your and this has to be obtained for every single computer. So if you obtain one API in the lab, that API key will not work on your laptop at home. On your laptop at home, you need to get a different API key. It's free of cost, so you can get as many API keys as you want. Okay, and that has to be included in here. So in case you are implementing an application and you suddenly find that the maps thing doesn't come up on the screen, this could be one of the potential sources of problem. Okay, keep that in mind. Now, getting back to this one. So in here, I get hold of the map view, and then in the map view I say set built-in zoom controls. Let me see if my okay, this is ready. So let me start up this particular example, and then be able to go back and have a look at what the user interface looks like. Once I show you the user interface, then we will see how it is useful in practice. So as you see, I have a maps-based user interface. This is a lot more intuitive to use than those spinners and things like that that I have shown in the previous example. In here, suppose I want to set up a proximity alert for the station. All I need to do is go and touch that, and then I can set up the proximity alert. In fact, that's exactly what I'm going to do now. So I will go, and then I simply click on that, and then there you go. I have set up the proximity alert for the particular location. This is a lot more intuitive user interface, right? Now, obviously, I'll show you how it works in a minute. Going back to the code, this is where I set up. This one allows me to put the zoom controls on the screen. As you will see from the screen here, I will have the zoom controls. It should be down below somewhere. You can't see it here, but it is down below there. Okay, I'm unable to push this onto the top there, so it is down below zoom controls and so on. Very useful. And I set up in the map. What I am doing is I'm setting up the zoom level to 16. This is a particular number which allows me to zoom into the particular location. And then I set up the center of my map to be this particular location. This is the if you can remember these numbers, it is 114, 114, 22 something. This, drop that point there, and then you will notice that this is nothing but the latitude and longitude, but expressed without the point, but with many numbers. Okay, 114 point something. So that is the center point. So I can specify where my map opens on the screen. So if you are implementing an application for Hong Kong, obviously you don't want, when the user invokes the application, you don't want the application to open up in North America. You want, when the user opens, the application should intuitively open to around where the user is located. And one other way of doing it is, if the user's location is already known in the device, you can use that as a center point when you open the application. So several different ways that you can make use of. Okay? Now, this itemized overlay is what I make use of in order to draw these push pins on the screen. You see these push pins on the screen? These push pins are overlaid on top of the map. Okay? I supply the graphic for the push pin, and then I will put it on the maps in those locations that are specified in this particular array called an itemized overlay. Again, the details you will see it in the lab tomorrow. You also see the user location manager and so on. These things you have seen before, DB adapter and so on. And then, in addition, this particular function, all that you need to do, it has to be included. When you declare a map activity, when you subclass the map activity, that function always has to be implemented. If you don't, Android will complain. The framework will complain about it. So that is how I create the maps interface for my application. Any questions so far? Reasonably clear? Again, please do go to the lab tomorrow and then test it out. So I already set up the alert for that location, right? So let me send this location to the device, and then obviously the location has been set. Now once that is done, now what I will do is I will send the exact location, and if everything works correctly, you should hear some sound. Same functionality now implemented using a maps interface, and you see the notification alert on top here. Okay. And if you click on that, it will bring you back to the user interface. Maps user interface that you have seen before. Okay, now getting back to the application. Let me see if there is anything else. I think that's about it for the maps application. Let me go back and finish up the discussion on Google Maps API. So, okay, adding markers to the screen is done by using this function called Itemized Overlay. And this Itemized Overlay method provides these methods: add overlay, and to add an overlay item to the array list, create item, size, and on tap. When you tap an item on the overlay, what is it going to, what do you expect it to do? So let me show you the corresponding code for the itemized overlay. This is the itemized overlay example here. So what I'm doing is I am extending this class called itemized overlay here, and when I extend it, I need to implement certain methods. Add overlay. Whenever that method is called, you add an item to the overlay, and then create an item, size, the size of the item, and on tap. What does this on tap implement? If you touch the overlay item that you put on the screen, like the push pin on the screen, if I touch, like what I showed you, when I touched the push pin on the screen, it created a proximity alert for the location. That part is implemented in. Notice that I have implemented that part. So if you put overlay items on the screen and you want those overlay items to touch when the user touches them for it to do something, you implement this on tap function for the overlay item, and then in here you will implement all the details. So this is the alert that you saw on the screen, saying it prints out the alert dialog with the message and so on, get title and so on, and the location manager. So what does this actually do? Within the map, for example, if you tap on that, you will notice that this dialog has popped up on the screen, alert dialog. This is caused by that method in the function called onTap. This method is the one that creates onTap message on the screen. Okay? Questions? All right. 4 methods to be implemented. To summarize, the Google Maps API, one more time. So the last part, adding markers to the screen. Any questions? Again, what I would suggest is to go through the exercise tomorrow, and it will become even more clear. Right? Okay, so that means that I have finished this chapter.